The players have voted and they came up with this year's 2023 captains for the Colts. Okay, it's a list of 7 guys, and I don't think we're going to be surprised by it. Most of these guys are usually captains, and I think we expected these guys to be captains, but it's official. The Colts have officially released who the captains are, and this year, those captains are going to be DeForest Buckner, of course. Zaire Franklin gets captaincy this year. Ryan Kelly, Shaq Leonard, who is back at practice. We'll talk about that. Kenny Moore II, Quentin Nelson, and the rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson was voted as a captain. And that's not, surprising news really, but it is notable news that the players already feel a certain way that they can elect the rookie quarterback to be their captain. So those are the guys that are going to be leading as we go into the season. And again, it's kind of as expected. Most of these guys, if not all these guys, were expected to be captains, right? But it is notable news going into the season that these are the guys that are still the leaders among the team. Now, some other news outside of the captains, we have a few things to touch on here. First, it's going to be that Shaq Leonard is back at practice. Okay, him and EJ Speed both had the red jerseys off. They were full participants in practice, and today marked the last day of practice before game week. Okay, they'll come back together starting next week, and they'll start to get into their weekly flow of practices and then games on Sundays. Because outside of the Thursday game, we play 1 o'clock every Sunday. So we're getting some guys back that we needed going into the season. I just told you guys that I was starting to get worried about Shaq Leonard, especially because we picked up a waiver claim that was a linebacker, so started to get a little nervous. But it appears from everything I'm seeing that he is an edge rusher. So I'm working on putting a video together about him and about what we're going to get from him and what we might expect from him in the rotation. There are a lot of people excited about him. He had a really good preseason for the Cowboys. So make sure you subscribe with notifications on so you make sure to be notified when that video does come out. Okay, and some other news about one of our guys, Zach Moss, is back at practice, and it appears that he doesn't have any kind of cast or sling on his arm, so he could be back before we thought. All along it sounded like he was going to be out till week 2 or week 3 was going to be the earliest he came back, but it appears there's a chance that he's going to be back next week. I don't believe he was practicing. Yes, Zach Moss still not practicing. He's been out for about a month at this point, but there is a chance that he comes back next week. That's not concrete, but it looks like he might be back earlier than expected, which is something that I guess you kind of could have expected when, Jonathan Taylor was expected to be out going into the season. So you need another body. It makes sense that they wouldn't bring in any other running backs because they think Zach Moss might be ready. So we'll see what happens there. Continue to keep you guys updated when I know more on that. Okay, but other running back news, some more Jonathan Taylor news has come out. And I believe I mentioned to you guys that Jonathan Taylor, when the Colts were having their talks with the Dolphins, they had asked for Jalen Waddle in return, which I didn't think was a crazy ask, right? If everybody thinks Jonathan Taylor is so valuable, why is Jalen Waddle such a big ask from them? I'm not real sure. But it was also reported today by Dove Kleiman that the Dolphins were also asked about defensive tackle Christian Wilkins, who has been told, he's been looking for a new contract. They're not sure if they're going to pay him there in Miami. So they had talks about possibly switching Christian Wilkins and Jonathan Taylor. Okay, but we talked about on this channel about how the Colts should go get Robert Hunt if they're going to trade Jonathan Taylor to the Dolphins. And that also was something that was talked about between the teams. Okay, now on top of that, the Colts were also asking for a second-round pick if they were to get one of those players from the Dolphins. Okay, so a lot of people are going to see that and think, okay, that's definitely unreasonable. Jalen Waddle in a second. At that point, you're getting to a point where that might be a little unreasonable. But again, wide receivers hold more value than running backs. That's just the way it is, right? When everybody saw that they wanted just Jonathan Taylor for Jalen Waddle, and you thought that was a crazy request, that's a good deal. And the fact that people think that's a crazy request, like the people that think that that's a crazy ask are the same people, like you're making the Colts point for them. Like that's what they're trying to tell people, is that the running back position isn't as valuable as Jonathan Taylor thinks it is. So There's a lot going on in that situation, and I'd like to know with the new information, do you think the Colts are being unreasonable with what they're asking? Because honestly, I don't. I think it's perfectly reasonable. Maybe a second is a little much for Jonathan Taylor if you're getting Jalen Waddle and the second back. I could understand that. Maybe it's Jalen Waddle and a third, Jalen Waddle and a fourth, but it's not crazy. It's not totally out of the realm of possibility, right? The only reason that it's a crazy decision is because Miami would then be having to give up the draft capital, give up the good player, and you're paying Jonathan Taylor. That would be the deal. So, sure, from that aspect, it's crazy, but Chris Ballard was very clear. He's not just going to let Jonathan Taylor walk out of the door. It doesn't matter if the next team is going to pay him or not. He's looking at Jonathan Taylor's value as a player and saying, okay, if you think it's this much, then we're going to think it's this much and we're going to ask for this much. And if you don't think he's worth that, then we're not going to get rid of him. So, it's a business decision at the end of the day. That was another thing Chris Ballard was pretty clear about, was the fact that his job is to make the decision that is best for the Colts as they go into this season and as they look into the future. And at the end of the day, is paying a running back that is still hurt the best decision for the franchise, especially with what his asking price is. Chris Ballard, it's his job to figure that out. As much as people want to say Jim Irsay's been involved in the decisions, like Chris Ballard, step by step, is involved in the contract negotiations. That's the way it is. That's the way it's always been. Jim Irsay has always let the GMs make their own decisions. And that's not going to be any different in this situation, especially because Chris Ballard went out of his way to draft Jonathan Taylor on Jim Irsay's suggestion in the war room. Jim Irsay said, if you want the guy, go get him. And that gave Ballard the okay to say, okay, let's go get Jonathan Taylor here. So I know he wants to mend the relationship. And from everything it sounds like, he will, because no team is going to be willing to offer anything close to what his actual value is as a football player. So one way or another, Jonathan Taylor is going to be on the team. I did hear other information today that said that Jonathan Taylor would have to be on the active roster for 9 games this year in order for his contract to not be told into next year. Right. And that right there, that's right around trade deadline time. So if he's still on the team by then, and if he's still not playing by then, things are going to get real active again. But again, this is something that, and stuff like this might come out like, oh, the Colts wanted this, the Colts wanted that. A story like this feels like it's probably going to be the last thing we hear about this Jonathan Taylor situation for a while, until he's back to a situation where he's either, again, ready to play, or we're getting close to the trade deadline and he hasn't played yet. So if anything else happens, I will surely keep you guys updated. But until then, that's going to do it for this video. So as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.